made floating islands to inhabit and built chinampas to grow the crop. They also built aqueducts to bring water into the city, and they built dikes to stop the salt water from coming into the city. Chinampas are small floating islands built by the Aztecs to produce crops. They were made by building a big rectangle using mud and sticks over the water, and then they planted the crops. On the chinampas they grew maize, beans, squash, tomatoes, and chilies. You got of the food, if you were poor, you got what you farmed. The original inhabitant of the Aztec capital was Huitzilopochtli. They all had temples in the middle of the city, and around the temples were houses, and around the houses were the chinampas. Since the Aztecs kept growing, it meant that they had to be careful to not provoke their neighbors, preventing a war. Slide. Tonapuali is one of the Aztec calendars, and it counts down days and consists of 260 days. And Teopujuali is the other calendar and describes the days and rituals related to the seasons, and it has 365 days. That Tonapujuali has been called a sacred calendar because its main purpose is to divide the days and rituals between the gods. Without this calendar, the world would soon come to an end. Aztec cosmology, the universe is in a very delicate balance. This balance is in constant danger of being disrupted by the shifting powers of the gods because they are always fighting for power. This struggle cannot be won by any god. The world is always on the brink of going in a spiritual war, a war of gods competing for supreme power. To prevent this from happening, the gods have been given their own space, their own time. Two types of schools: Tlatelpochcalli for practical and military studies, and Acalmecac for advanced learning in writing, astronomy, statesmanship, theology, and other areas. Parents guided their children until they turned 14 and can go to school, and the Aztec teachers were strict. They were required to give cold baths in the morning, make them do hard work, and physical punishment.
Religion was one of the most important aspects in Aztec society, and human sacrifice was very important in the religion of the Aztecs. The major Aztec gods were
Huitzilopochtli, Tezcatlipoca, Quetzalcoatl, and Tlaloc. Huitzilopochtli was the tribal god, Tezcatlipoca was the god of the night, Quetzalcoatl was the god of wind, and Tlaloc was the god of rain. Huitzilopochtli
was important to the Aztecs because he encouraged them to leave their homeland and live in the Valley of Mexico. He also made the Aztecs believe that they needed to feed him with human sacrifice.
Tezcatlipoca
was important to the Aztecs because he was the most powerful god. He could also see visions of the future.
Tlaloc
was important to the Aztecs because he could unleash deadly floods or withhold the rains for years, and he controlled their survival.
Quetzalcoatl
was important to the Aztecs because after he left Mexico, and the Aztecs believed he would come back and destroy the Aztec Empire. The Aztecs began human sacrifice because they believed that without it, the gods would grow sick and die, so they needed to feed them blood from human sacrifice. It was the Aztecs' strongest expression of religion and culture. The Aztecs believed that their gods were very powerful, and same with natural disasters. So they were afraid that one wrong step could lead to a natural disaster. The Aztecs called their temples Teocalli, and oftentimes you would find the Aztec priests praying and worshipping there. The Aztecs believed that each imperfect creation they made would form an age called the sun.
The Aztecs never had a true currency, but they mostly used cocoa beans as a type of scale in which items were worth. For example, a small rabbit was worth 30 beans, and a turkey egg was cost 3 beans. Including crops and food, there were many goods and services that could be bought in an Aztec market. Raw materials, finished products, jewelry, wood, and even medicine could be bought in the market. One of the most valuable items in the market was cocoa beans. They were valuable because they could be made into a chocolate drink that was said to give wisdom. The market goods were transported through canoes and across bridges they built. The goods' safety was ensured by the mountains surrounding their city. Also, the fact that their bridges could be easily broken to stop people from getting in kept them safe. Merchants fit into the social structure through all of the resources they brought to the Aztec city. The merchants sold their goods in Chinachit lands, markets. The taxes they paid on their profits enriched the Aztec state. Places the Aztecs conquered were exempt from tribute due to the fact that they did not have the resources the Aztecs needed. Instead, they would be responsible for maintaining imperial frontiers to fight off enemies. From tribute, they received things like cloth and precious metals. The Aztec courts made their decisions as courts do today. They studied the evidence, looked for witnesses, and put out a sentence. Nobles were the owners of the land in which the commoners paid rent to. Their land could be lost by such a thing as not being able to pay rent. The Aztecs never had a prison system, so most crimes were either met with slavery or death. For example, stealing could be met with death. For drunkenness, a first offense would be having your head shaved and your house destroyed. A second offense would be met with death. Various punishments for different crimes would be death for adultery and slavery for cutting down a living tree. Slaves were not treated as if it was shameful, but were thought of as being unlucky. Slaves were allowed to keep their previous homes and their own slaves until they paid their debts to society.